This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Welcome to the Triple Option. Here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Alongside my old friend Steven Simcox, one of my many proteges. I have lots of proteges. I've been in this business a long time. Garrett's a protege. Jack, I'd like to think, is a protege, even though he may not want to admit it. Our producer now. I've had a lot of radio stations. I think J.D. Piquel, one of my proteges, I'm going to call that one. He's doing very well in this space, better than I am all of a sudden, but I'm still calling it on that one. But Steven, you and I worked together at the radio station for a very long time, started as an intern. Now you're locked on TCU and doing that. So I thought, what better person to come on the week after Deion and TCU than Steven Simcox? And you know the Horned Frogs very well. We'll talk about it from their perspective in a second. But early on, you got to witness the Deion hype train, which has now been thrown into full-on hyperdrive. I mean, it is absolutely, the Kessel Run of things where he's going to be the number one topic in college football all year long. Absolutely. And for good reason, but and I don't want to put too much into that game, but it was a super impressive debut that he had. And now, because now it's all about clicks and page views, and he is Mr. Clicks and page views. No, it is. I'm really happy to be part of the Paul Catalina coaching tree. It's one of my, I put it on my resume. It's one of the things I love about, my life. But yeah, Deion it's incredible what he's done. And it's funny because you're totally right. He is the topic. He is the conversation. And I can't really think, we've had college coaches that transcend their team, like Nick Saban, right? Obviously. Alabama has a long storied history, but people think about Nick Saban when they think about Alabama football now. But it's very different because when they think about Nick Saban, it's like, here's a guy who might murder somebody if he sees a false start on 3rd and 5. And that's not really Deion's vibe. Like, he's very, he's out there about, I'm trying to promote my guys. We're really open about getting our dudes opportunities, NIL. We have a lot of swagger. We're going to let people be themselves. But I think the thing that surprised me the most, that was a well-coached football team that played TCU on Saturday. There weren't a lot of pre-snap penalties. They turned the ball over once, but they played a clean football game. And so it's not just the flash and, all the kind of hype that he brings. There's obviously a lot of substance there too. And I feel like my view before the game was like, okay, Deion's like a CEO, right? Like, he's a talent acquisition guy. He's going to bring in a lot of dudes that can play. And obviously he had some organizational traits because the Jackson State tenure wasn't just a complete disaster. They did really well, but I thought there would be a leap up from that to what he was doing at Colorado. But he hit the ground running, and now you have to sustain it. But man, it's fun. I can't even really compare it to someone. I guess Lane Kiffin maybe, but Lane's kind of goofy, and he's just leaned into the fact of being like a fun uncle. And Deion's not. That's not what you get from Deion. No, he's about developing stars. Yes, he's about because he is a star, and he takes it seriously. This is not like a joke to him. No, it's not. And the fact that people told him, a guy who, and we talked about this on the Monday show with Chris, they told a guy who was a Hall of Famer in one sport and a professional in another sport and a good baseball player. He was a good, you would have wanted Deion on your team. Right. You're not built, he's not Acuna or anything, but you would have wanted him on your team for sure. He was a good 5.5 WAR in his baseball career. So that's not bad. Did you just pull that off your head right now? I've been looking it up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I looked at it today. You could have said yes. I wouldn't have pressed you, but that's okay. 5.5 WAR for Deion. So that's a guy the guy's got, 5.5 wins above replacement. Baseball, that's a guy you want on your team. He's better than the guy who's going to be there. So this is a guy who's done things in sports and business that, we're not done before, right? And there's not many people like him. And then when he decided he wanted to be a coach, everybody's like, well, you haven't done that before. Well, everybody's not done something before they do it. That's true. Welcome to philosophy with Paul Catalina. Yeah. I used to do the radio show with Butch Henry, and we used to do a thing, this is pre-Smokey, where we had the Butch Henry Country Bump of the Day, where we'd play a country song coming out, and he would grade the song. And so this album came out called Last of the Breed, which was Willie Nelson, Ray Price, and Merle Haggard. And it had some bangers on it, but they were all new songs. And this song hit every single thing he said. It had a steel guitar. It had like all, a fiddle, all this stuff in the first few bars. And I was like, oh, he's going to love this. It's like, no, zero. Never heard it before. I was like, well, Butch, every song that you've ever heard, you hadn't heard it before. You heard it the first time.
You have to hear it the first time.
Like the first time you heard Chattahoochee, you didn't know that Chattahoochee existed. It wasn't in the ether as like part of your soul. And then you heard it and you felt you knew it the whole time. You heard the song. So everybody's not done something before. And thank you, Siri.
See? Yeah. Siri knows. She knows this. She knows this is true.
Yeah, she knows it's
the
true.
first time you've never heard this.
Yeah. But in Deion's case, this is a guy who is uniquely built for this era. And I think without the transfer portal and particularly without NIL, he would still be good at this because he would figure it out, but he would not maybe be enjoying it as much because he'd be hitting the wall on what he would have as philosophical differences with the NCAA.
Right.
Which are, look, he was like, nobody's under the impression that he was not getting paid at Florida State under the table. Nobody's under the impression nobody's under the impression that he doesn't believe in building your brand and all of that. And so he's embraced all that. Now, had the rules not changed, maybe Deion, says he wants to be an NFL, I'm just going to go right to the NFL, which I do think is going to happen for Deion eventually. I think that he's going to.
Do you think he just wants to follow Shedeur around, or do you feel like he?
No, I think he'll also he'll want to prove that he can do it
at the next level.
Yeah, without having to make the players himself.
Okay.
You have to wait at least 17 years when you do that. It's not an efficient recruiting pipeline. Just go make one. But I think he'll want to prove that. I think he wants to show, and he'll probably want to show you can do it at a couple places. But the thing is that if the NFL calls, if they're like, oh, hey, we need this, and he's going to have an owner that just does not want to be in the way.
Right.
Like he and Jerry are great friends. He would never work for Jerry.
Oh,
because,
no.
again, Mike McCarthy's the perfect kind of Jerry coach. And if they stumble into a Super Bowl with Mike McCarthy, it's kind of just because Mike knows exactly how to navigate that.
Would the media just explode if we had Jerry, Deion, and the Cowboys all converge? Like, that feels like, I don't know how First Take would deal with that. I think that's their ultimate dream, is just having all three of those brands meld into one thing. But no, you're right. The press conferences would be amazing, but they wouldn't work together well.
Yeah, so Deion has to be in a place, again, Rick George has decided, hey, the best way to save this athletic department going forward is to let me be the administrator and let him be the superstar. Right. And I'm not, Rick George doesn't have to get in his way. Just make sure we have enough money. That's all that he needs to do. And, going to the Big 12 is probably a huge Deion thing. Nobody's really kind of confirmed that. He's obviously commented on it, but all these things are going to be, on the Deion hype train. Now, outside of that, this is a team that can score points. They have not proven that they can stop anybody yet. We'll see against Nebraska this week how that changes, because the difference in offense between TCU and Nebraska is going to be pretty stark. But even still, this is something we have not seen before. And I do think it's only because we're in this era of NIL, transfer portal. Deion is the perfect guy for that, because he does not have to go, well, all right, we won't pay anybody.
Yeah.
Make sure that these kids only get books and sandwiches.
Wink, wink, right.
It would be, look, he got Des Bryant suspended,
yes,
which is even stupider now, not from Deion's perspective, from the NCAA's perspective, that Des Bryant got suspended for the last part of his last year at Oklahoma State just because he had lunch with Deion and an agent, talking about something that they knew he was going to do. The NCAA knew Des Bryant's got 8 more games left as a college athlete, and he's going to leave. would it make sense for him to talk to one of those guys and a guy who knows these things before he makes that decision 3 months from now?
Yeah.
Like, it's only kind of a smart thing to do. And now it just looks bad. So, like those things I think would have been tough for him to navigate, but now, shoot.
You're totally right about the timing. Because yes, and I think still like in our minds, and it was hard for me to get over this, which is weird because I just watched TCU do it. Like they had a team that was 5-7, they were dead in the water, and they had a coach in Gary Patterson who frankly just didn't embrace this new world of college football. He didn't necessarily want to be a part of it in the head coaching role, at least, in managing all these things. And so Sonny Dykes comes in, he brings in a lot of transfers. It wasn't Deion guys. Like I don't think the national media was like, oh wow, you just picked up Mark Perry from Colorado, the safety. Like let's hunker down on that. But still, he flipped that roster over. They have an incredible run. But in your mind, you're just conventional wisdom tells you, okay, this is going to take time to build this. But we're seeing with more and more teams now, if you just get the talent there and you have like some structure and you let guys make plays, we'll see what the ceiling is for Colorado, but they're obviously much more improved than they were. And it looks like a team that can make some noise in the Pac-12. I also think he definitely wants to be in the Big 12. Deion doesn't want to be on the Pac-12 network. He doesn't, that's too small for him. I'm not even sure Deion wants to be on ESPN Plus. That might be something he has to work out with Brett Yormark. Yeah. He might put those games on Prime Media himself or something like that. But yeah, it's the perfect time. And I think even when we talk about him in the NFL, he's sort of in a better situation from acquiring talent now because he doesn't have to deal with contracts. He doesn't have to deal with like timelines. Mm-hmm. He can't just call up Stephon Diggs and be like, hey, come on home. Maybe he'd be like the perfect NBA coach because he could just tamper with people and get them to request trades and that kind of thing. But he's got so much freedom of movement with the players now that they can get there immediately. In most cases, they're eligible to play right away. And yeah, it's the perfect time to do it. And because he's not like staunch in his ideas of the past, like it's not taking him much to break out of the mold and do this because he's just by his own self, he's an innovator, right? Like he's always done things a different way. So he's killing it right now. And until we'll see what happens, like when they hit some adversity, but until they lose a game, you really can't say enough about what he's done there.
Well, and I think they're like, I don't think this is a college football playoff team. I think that they've proven that they're going to win some games. Mm-hmm. And they got Oregon and USC coming up really soon. That's going to be tough. Like those are going to be shootouts. They've proven they can win a game 45-42. Yeah. That like you don't really want to, if you want to win the college, if you want to be in the playoff and win conferences, you can't really bank on winning every game 45-42.
But it's a fun brand of football.
And Deion knows that. Deion knows that. And look, he's made some really good hires. Sean Lewis, great hire. Mm-hmm. That was a great hire. I'm a little bit out on Charles Kelly. I'm a little biased because he had a tenure at Florida State where he was not what you would call good.
What would you call it, Paul?
I would call it bad.
Okay.
I would say, and it's the weirdest thing. It was first down, second down, just mauling people on defense. And you saw this the other day. It could be third down and anything. And Colorado was getting it. For some reason, third down.
There's just a mental block there or some disconnect.
Like Derek Zoolander can't turn left. that
was a third down hill for them to climb.
He just couldn't turn left. But I mean, again, he's been with Saban. Now he's with Deion. Mm-hmm. I'm sure he's better than he was then. And he was also with Jimbo Fisher, who that was the first wave of coaches being like, "Hey, he hasn't changed any of this." If you watch the film from last year and the film from this year, it's the same. He's might as well just yell in the plays like, "We're gonna run 32 trap, 32 trap." We ran it last week against Duke, third quarter.
It was on clip. Yeah, it was on this clip, this specific clip.
You guys saw it.
You see that one?
This is the hand signal we make when we're gonna run it. Just so you know. But yeah, I think he's made some really good hires. He's been really when he was at Jackson State, he brought in guys like Mike Zimmer and a bunch of guys he knew weren't going to need money to help him do that. But also, as much as he is so bravado, don't think that he hasn't learned from all these guys. Mickey Andrews, his defensive coordinator at Florida State, helped him out tremendously. Mike Zimmer, all the guys he had at Jackson State that he brought in from the NFL. He's not just sitting there going like, okay, he's here. He's sitting in those rooms and going, okay, I learned this from Mike Zimmer. I learned from this guy. You know what? I need to run an offense that's going to score a lot of points. Who I'm going to call? I'm going to get the head coach from Kent State to come in here and be my offensive coordinator. Now, that might last for a year because somebody's going to call up Sean Lewis and be like, hey,
what's your price?
Please bring that here. But it was a really bold career move for Sean Lewis because you run the risk of being forgotten about underneath there, and you were already a head coach. But really interesting what's going on there. Like, maybe 1-2 years, I think, before somebody's like, well, be a head coach again. Come on.
Yeah, get back to it.
Get back to it.
Can I ask you about Travis Hunter for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that was amazing to watch. I knew he was good. My perspective on it, though, before the game was like, okay, well, surely he's not going to play all the snaps on both sides of the ball. But then suddenly, it was like I was watching a 2A playoff football game, and like Rashad Paul's out there just making all the plays for Bremond. Like he's single-handedly taking over the game. I know like Woodson, and then, I mean, even his coach, Deion, did that at times. But
not that much.
Not that much. Like, can you compare it to anybody that you've seen at this level?
Honestly, I can't, because most of the time when you have that offensive player or defensive player that plays offense, which is mostly that's the case,
right.
I think Travis Hunter, you can't really say what is he? Like, he's
just an athlete.
He's just a guy. Like, they're putting him out there. Like, with Charles Woodson, he was a cornerback who played wide receiver.
Yes.
And he had a lot of snaps. Like, they were getting him out there a lot. But again, that offense wasn't trying to run 100 plays with Lloyd Carr.
Right.
They're trying to run 70 plays. Like, that was their goal. Like, they were controlling the clock, and they'd throw Woodson out there and be like, okay, well, you can't out-athlete number 2, so we're not going to think that you can, so go do that. Plus, Woodson was the kick returner as well, so he was out there all the time. So he's the closest thing, but Travis Hunter plays more than he does. Most of the time, it's like a guy, he's got a package. He does this.
Yes.
Kind of
gimmicky.
Yeah.
This is not that.
Look, Deion didn't play that much offense at Florida State. Like, they didn't need him to.
Yeah.
And it was a very different time. He played a little, I don't think that you would, go out there. You look at his offensive stats at Florida State. I think Travis Hunter's probably already beat him, and it was more quality over quantity. And Deion made his bones as the kick returner as well. Like,
yeah.
Go ahead and punt it to him.
He'll
Have
take
fun.
it. He'll house it.
Make that life decision and see how it turns out for you. But Travis Hunter is special. I mean, that to go out there and be able to do that. Now, can he do that for 11 more games?
Sure.
Especially given their schedule, they don't have a game where you can go like, well, they can let Travis chill today. Like they really don't. Like even Stanford or whoever, like
he's got to play.
He's got to play. So they've got one of the tougher schedules in the entire country. The Pac-12 is really good this year, but man, he's something that we have. Again, kind of like Ohtani. Like we just don't see it that often, and you can't expect it to be commonplace anymore.
And I think sometimes we think of it in the context of us. So like, I think, well, Travis Hunter surely can't play all these snaps, but I also get winded when I go up the stairs sometimes. So I feel like he's working with a little different skill set than maybe I am. Okay, so you don't have to give me the full answer on this because I know you talked off air about wanting to do something bigger on this subject, but Deion and Florida State, like, so that relationship is there. And Mike Norvell is doing great right now. So there's no reason to think that this would happen. But in a hypothetical world where there is an opening, and what Deion said, did he say he's no longer a Knoll?
No, he just said he graduated from somewhere else. No, look, a lot of that's bravado because, look, Mickey Andrews helped him get into coaching. If Bobby was still alive, he wouldn't say that and not feel guilty about it. I'm sure he probably even, like, if he thinks about, like, oh, well, if Coach Bowden heard me say that, he'd be sad. Like those things. I mean, that's what he said. I think he feels a little bit slighted because he didn't get that job.
Right.
You also have to take a lot of things that Deion says with a grain of salt because, a lot of it is, again,
just stream of consciousness.
He's just going.
Yeah.
And that's part of his whole thing, which is what makes it brilliant. But Mike Norvell, and the reason he's gone so hard in the transfer portal, knew that if he does not get Florida State winning to the level that they expect, and winning to the level that Florida State expects is competing for the title,
Right.
not winning the conference,
Yeah.
not going 9-3 or 10-2.
Not playing in the Liberty Bowl.
No, you are playing January 1st or after, or the day like New Year's Eve or after is when you get to play in the postseason.
Yeah.
Nothing else. You're not playing December 23rd? No. Come on. December 29th? Please.
Yeah.
No. That's not what's going to happen. You're playing later. And so he knew he had to accelerate that. And he's been fantastic in the portal because if he had 3 bad years, Deion Sanders, after Florida State told him, go get your degree and go get another head coaching job, they would be begging him. Begging him. They would fight wars to get him back there.
They would invade Florida University just because. It's not really related, but they just kind of want to do it.
If we're going all out, might as well, No, like they would absolutely. So he knew that. And he knew, he probably in the back of his mind, and he's a very confident coach, but in the back of his mind, I'm sure he knows that the minute I mess up, people are going to put Coach Prime signs up in the stands.
Yeah.
When he lost to Jacksonville State, here's one of the things I'm really impressed with Mike Norvell. He lost to Jacksonville State because of a boneheaded decision he and his coaching staff made.
Well, that's a Hail Mary play?
Yeah,
Okay.
where they were in man coverage on the last play of the game.
As long as you play your cousin in NCAA
And
football.
then he was like, well, we did this because we thought they might have time to go spike the ball. And you're like, so what, man?
just keep them out in the end zone.
Yeah,
There's one objective here.
yeah. So just no, and then I think he very wisely was like, well, that was dumb. And a lot of people can't do that. And he has very well adjusted since then. So I do think that, I don't think it's something he wakes up in the morning and has a picture of Deion in his mirror and is like, not today, man. Not today.
He's throwing darts at it.
Yeah, not today, Deion. Not today. I'm one step ahead of you.
He's got newspaper clippings.
What Deion's doing and what Mike Norvell are doing, Deion's even had to go more extreme because he took over a program that was not relevant for a long time. Mike Norvell took over a program that had 4 or 5 bad seasons, not a generation of bad seasons. They're a decade removed from a national championship and only 7 years removed from the last 10-win season. So he did it carpet bombed it, as where Mike Norvell's been methodical, but it's the same thing. And it's the same. And we'll talk about this in the third segment about Dabo Swinney, where this may be where the college football world has left him behind a little bit. Or not left him behind, where he's chosen to not get on the train. But Deion said, look, I'm going to bring in 80 new players because this is a 1-11 team. I have no reason to do this.
There's no loyalty here.
There's no loyalty here. But but Florida State's done it very methodically of these transfers. And then using the cachet of this place is pretty cool when we win, right? Where'd you rather come? Would you rather go here? Or would you rather go,
Yeah.
So,
Or do you want to be a legend at Florida State?
Keon Coleman was down to Ole Miss and FSU. Now, look, NIL has a huge amount to do with it. And I think it might have been splitting hairs when it came down to dollars and cents. But as cool as Ole Miss might be, what have they done compared to what Florida State can do? And that's the selling point of that's a cool place. Great. Would you rather be at Ole Miss, helping Lane try to get the first one, or would you rather restart the dynasty here?
Do you want to finish 4th in the SEC West?
Yeah.
Maybe you get lucky. Maybe you finish 3rd one year.
Yeah.
Or come to a place where there's a path to getting in to win it
one
all.
team.
Yeah.
You got to be better than one team.
Yeah. There's one video game boss in this conference that you have to defeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Not 7.
That's a great way to put it. When we come back, I want to talk a little at TCU's perspective. Plus, we're going to get to know Simi a little bit. Get to know Steven Simcox. Also, want to throw one more on my coaching tree. Q. Q's on my coaching tree, and he's wildly successful right now. So
he's doing a little bit better than us.
Yes, he is. That's like if I was Bill Walsh, that's me claiming Andy Reid. Yeah. So that's a big one right there.
Yeah, Q and you and Smokey all at your former place of employment. It was kind of like when the Thunder had Harden and Westbrook and Durant all in the same place.
Just traded us all away.
They just traded you all away.
Yeah, just traded us all away. All right, when we come back, we'll talk about TCU, Steven's alma mater, and we'll get to know Steven a little bit.